For the next few months, as I wind down my duties here on Greater Boston, I'm going to be talking with a select group of people we've had on the show before, people with unique skills and perspectives who have elevated the discourse of the show. We're calling it the Greater Boston version of Emily's List. Tonight, Andrea Cabral is on the hot seat. We got to know Andrea during her tenure as Suffolk County Sheriff, and even then, she was willing to sound off on issues that went far beyond her jurisdiction, which we appreciated because so many people in public life are unwilling to share their opinions, period. Andrea is now the Secretary of Public Safety here in Massachusetts. Welcome back to Greater Boston.
What a pleasure.
Well, meanwhile, I have to razz you because you've gone underground since you became the Secretary of Public Safety. They don't want you to talk?
No, it's not that. It's just that I have 14 incredibly high-profile agencies within my secretariat. I don't get to stick my head up very much.
And you don't really want to go out there and say something that could get you in trouble. Face it.
I've never done that, Emily. You know I never get myself in trouble.
I'm just curious about that because while you were sheriff, you really wanted to have a say in it. I remember one of your assistants calling us one day saying, you know, Andrea has opinions on other things. And you always sort of categorize people by their specialty, you know, law enforcement or legal issues or the arts, but you really wanted to speak out beyond that. How come?
I did, and I felt that I had an obligation, actually, to do that. There aren't very many women of color with a high enough profile to be able to speak and be heard on a number of different issues. And I'm like anyone else, I'm multidimensional, and there are a number of issues that I think affect me personally or affect people who are within either my personal or my professional orbit. So I felt that I had a platform and I had an ability to do it, so I would indulge that every now and again.
Was that ever problematic within law enforcement, if you could have waited beyond your jurisdiction, as I call it?
No, one of the luxuries of being an elected official is that you do have a lot more autonomy to express your opinion, and you have to take responsibility for it. As long as you're willing to deal with whatever feedback you get for expressing your opinion, you pretty much have free rein to say what it is you'd like to say. Now,
have you thought about seeking another office, a higher office? I mean, is that still on your burner somewhere?
No.
Why not?
I've done it. I ran for office twice. I became deeply embedded in the electoral process and in politics, and it's something that I'll always have I think a fairly strong skill set developed, but it's not something that I can see myself doing again in the future. I think there are lots of other ways to be useful and to be of service that aren't necessarily connected with seeking elective office.
You mentioned that there's other issues you feel as a woman of color. Like what? What was something that really burned in you that you wanted, to speak out on?
You mean while I was sheriff?
Yeah.
There probably wasn't much that I wanted to speak out on that I didn't actually speak out on, and a lot of it did have to do with law enforcement, but there were things around domestic violence and sexual assault, issues that affected women in particular, issues that affected children, general issues around victimization by people of other people. So there wasn't much that I wasn't able to indulge myself on.
You had a number of odd cases while you were sheriff, but I think the one that probably sticks out for everybody was the Craigslist killer, Philip Markoff, who before trial ended up killing himself, unfortunately, under your watch in, I think it was Suffolk County Jail. Was there a stranger case that you can think of?
In terms of the type of individual that we had, I actually thought that that Clark Rockefeller or Christian Gerhard Schreider was stranger. Just as a person, the ability to have that level of pretense and pretense at a high profile with using a well-known name and a name associated with wealth over a long period of time, and to go undetected as a fraud for such a long period of time. And I was also fascinated by his seamless assimilation in a correctional facility. He was, kept a low profile and kept to himself, and he read. He didn't have any problems, and he clearly struck me as someone who was able to size up a situation and adapt his behavior accordingly in a way that was most protective for him. He fascinated me more, I think, than the other case.
Other than California, I mean, Massachusetts has had its fair share. I mean, from Chuck Stewart, it's just like a lot of big big, high profile. Why? Is it because it's such a big melting pot? Why?
I'm not sure. I actually, this is going to sound funny, but I always think of Colorado as having the strangest cases. Theirs tend to be alien related or crop circle related. Yeah. Colorado has a lot of weird cases. We have certainly had our share, and unfortunately, they've usually been around. Rockefeller might be the exception, around extreme violence. We've had our share of very high. I think of Grenadier. Rosenthal. Yeah. There have been some very, very high profile, very odd killings. But we're lucky in Massachusetts. We have some really good experienced prosecutors, and those cases have always been well tried.
All right, Andrea Cabral on Emily's list. I hope you continue to watch Greater Boston after I leave it to you here. All right, appreciate it.